So, a little while back, one of our local Austin queens, Lawrie Bird, reached out to me about making an officiant gown for her. She was going to be officiating a wedding in Corpus Christi and wanted me to make a gown for her, which I was, of course, happy to take on the project. I love Lawrie. I've seen her perform many, many times, and she is an excellent performer. If you're ever in Austin, highly recommend checking out one of her shows. But after chatting with her a little bit about her ideas, she decided that she wanted to do a sparkly burgundy mermaid style gown. So, this is what we're going to be making. First and foremost, I cannot draw very well, so please bear with me, but we're going to be doing almost like a halter style top that leads up to a little small mock turtleneck, and then it'll be form-fitting all the way down to the knee, and then a big, huge skirt. And for the fabric, we're opting for a really sparkly four-way stretch fabric so she can move really easily on stage, but it has maximum sparkle. I wanted to keep the patterning pretty simple on this, so I'm just going to do really long pattern pieces that have princess seams all the way down to the floor. That way we're not breaking up her silhouette with any extra seams. First things first, I need to make her patterns. So she's already been in once. We talked through her ideas to see what she wanted to do. And I also did, as you can see, the good old fashioned duct tape trick where we wrapped her up like a mummy in duct tape, made my sketches on there, and then we cut it off. So her body, she pads in a very voluptuous way. So it's easier just to do the duct tape than to try and make the patterns any other way. So I'm going to use half of this to make the patterns for this dress, and then I'm going to save the other half for if we ever do any other projects together in the future. I already have that set up and we can make patterns from that. So very first and foremost, I'm going to start cutting this out. I didn't document the process of making this duct tape form. It's something that's pretty easily found online if you have questions about how that process works. But I'll just be showing you how I'm going to take this and then turn it into a flat paper pattern. So that's my very first step, and let's go ahead and get into it. And to start making patterns, I'm going to cut along all the reference lines that I drew on her body to make the separate pattern pieces. And one thing I do before I start cutting is I do write which piece is which. That way, once I start cutting them apart, it doesn't get too confusing. And once I have all the pieces cut out, I then lay them down onto a large piece of paper to trace them. This can be a little bit tricky, but we're just trying to do our absolute best that we can, and then we're going to go through and then kind of clean everything up as well. Once I had all the pattern pieces traced, I then needed to add the skirt because I only did the duct tape down to her knee. So I am drawing a flared shape at the bottom that's about, I think I did about 30 inches long, so I want to have extra, that way I can hem it properly when she has her shoes on. And then as one final step, I'm going through with my tailoring curve as well as a ruler to just kind of clean up the lines, because those duct tape pattern pieces are a really nice guide, but they're not quite perfect. Okay, so I figured this would be a good time to check in. I have all the main pattern pieces cut here, and I was stressing so bad about whether or not I had ordered enough fabric for this. Turns out I had plenty, but I have about, I think, more than a yard left over, so thank goodness for that. But now that I know that I have extra fabric left over, I'm going to add in some godets to the skirt of this. Lawrie wants to have very dramatic, very full bottom, so very like boom, boom for the silhouette. So I was very conservative with the flare on this because, again, I was just concerned about, not having enough fabric. So now that I know we're good on that, I'm going to make a separate pattern piece for the godets. I think I want to have 6 of them, so I'll need to cut 3 total. I think we should have plenty of fabric for that. So very simple pattern. Let's do that right now. To start making my godet pattern, I'm first going to start by drawing just a straight line that I think I settled on a little bit less than a yard for my length, and then I need to draw another line along the bottom that will be my width, and then I'm going to draw lines connecting the top point of the center line down to the outside points of that bottom line, making a triangle, and then I'll use a tailoring curve just to slightly curve the bottom so that it all kind of blends in with the skirt. I was very nervous to sew in the godets because for some reason I had it in my mind that it was a little bit more complex than it actually was, but this is actually super easy. The only part you need to kind of give a little bit more of attention to is the tip, the very top point where it connects with the seam, just because that can get messy if you're not focused on keeping it clean, but this is really just as simple as sewing 2 lines down on the seam just to include the godet in there. Okay, so yesterday was Lawrie's first fitting, and I'm so sorry I did not get any footage of it. It's so awkward to try and film something like that. So I have a couple pictures of how everything was looking after we pinned it, but everything went great. It was looking really good. I am going to make some fit adjustments. So it needs to come in quite a bit on the side. So basically the whole side all the way down. And then she did want the knee to be tighter. So I'm going to take that in from the back seams just on that last little bottom part before the flare starts. I also need to fully attach the neck piece. I figured out exactly where it's going to go on this top portion and all that good stuff. So just need to attach that and do the finishing around here. Also going to take the bust seam in just a little bit right here. I'll kind of try to show y'all what adjustments I'm going to be making and like where the pins are. But now it's just refining the fit and then doing the finishing touches. I also pinned her hem. So let's get into these adjustments. To show y'all my alteration process, I'm going to start with a really simple bust adjustment right here. So first and foremost, I always measure how much needs to come in on both sides. If they match up, great. If they don't match up, then I just take an average of the two. That way I'm doing the same adjustment on both sides because you want to maintain symmetry when you're doing alterations on a garment. Once I know how much needs to come in, I then take out my pins and turn the garment to the inside so that I can then mark how much I'm going to remove. And then blend that adjustment back into the side seam. Make sure when you're measuring how much to take out that you are measuring from the seam and not from the seam allowance. You want to make sure that you're doing it from the seam because that's how you pinned it when it was on the person's body. And then just sew, again, blending it right back into the original seam. And now I'm just going to repeat that process for the entire side seam as well as the 2 back seams as well. as a last minute change after talking to Lawrie, she did want to include a piece that connects to the front and the back that goes around the shoulder, kind of like a little drape. So I'm making a very, very simple pattern that is essentially just a rectangle, but with the top and the bottom being slightly off. The top's gonna be a little bit shorter than the bottom, and then I am again using a tailoring curve to make the top a little bit curved and the bottom curved, just so it lays a little bit more softly on the body. After cutting those out, I then finished the edges with some witch stitch and then gathered them on each side to prepare them to put on at the next fitting. And as an absolute last step, it's time to hem this dress, and I am again going to use witch stitch just because it gives a really, really nice clean finish on this fabric, and it's much easier than trying to sew it. So as some final thoughts, I really could not be happier with how this gown came out. The fit, I'm really proud of the fit on this because the body that she has is gorgeous, but it's also very hard to fit. So I'm really happy with the fit of this. The fabric's gorgeous, and Lawrie loves it, which is always the priority. And she's actually worn it a few times since I made this dress, and it always makes me so happy when I see her performing in it. Again, Lawrie is an excellent performer, so if you're ever in Austin, I highly recommend going to one of her shows. Tip the girls, of course, support local drag. And Lawrie and I have actually already worked on a couple more things together, so stay tuned for that, but I will see y'all on the next one. Bye.